Well, staying with the ABC's election coverage, and as Crikey reported this week, Q&A host and Indigenous man Stan Grant has castigated his employer for alleged racial biases. In a letter to the Managing Director of the ABC, David Anderson, part of which was of course leaked to Crikey, Grant cited ABC's coverage of the New South Wales election as an example of this racism. He wrote, quote, "In 2023, how is it at all acceptable that an election night coverage features an entirely white panel? There is no excuse for what I saw on air last night. None. I have worked at organisations around the world and nowhere would what we presented last night be tolerated." Saying that the ABC must do better, he said it was his responsibility to keep the organisation honest. He continued, "I don't do it for myself, I've had my career, but I don't want to wait another decade for things to change." Now, the panel in question featured Insiders host David Spears, 7:30 host Sarah Ferguson, election analyst Anthony Green, who of course we just talked about, and New South Wales state political reporter Ashley Raper. And yes, all four are white. But the panel also featured Malaysian-born ABC presenter Jeremy Fernandez, who is a person of colour. You saw it there in the ABC's own promotional material. So how does Grant reconcile this? The fact that any journalists of colour in our coverage were off-Broadway in support roles, reporting from only the suburbs, only adds to the insult, he said. A supporting role? You decide.
Coalition has Penrith, Upper Hunter and East Hills all sitting on a margin of less than 1%. So that could become crucial as the night goes on. But renters will play a big role,
Absolutely,
we think, in this campaign, right? If you look at the statewide swing, how easy is it to make that leap all the way to this end of the board?
Well, it's a statewide, the news poll this morning was 6.5%.
So what was the ABC's response? Well, News Director Justin Stevens said, "ABC News takes on board any criticism and welcomes constructive discussion," but he maintained it had an editorially strong and well-presented panel. He continued, "We respect Stan enormously. For decades he has been one of the highest profile First Nations journalists in this country, and with that he's carried the burden of fighting for the advancement of his First Nations and culturally diverse colleagues. That responsibility is on all of us to carry at the ABC, and not him alone." Now, I know we often criticise the ABC here, but I think this criticism, at least that particular example, was unwarranted. Keep the identity politics out of it. 2GB presenter Ben Fordham didn't mince his words.
Was Stan Grant asked to be part of the election coverage? Maybe they should have had Stan on there. Is that part of the issue? He was included in the federal election coverage for the ABC back in 2019, but according to Stan, he wasn't given enough screen time that night. So he left early, packed up his stuff, and he went home. I think we call that a dummy spit.